Thanks for tuning in to leftcoastnews.net. News and information from the wacky, sometimes communist, liberal west coast of the United States. For more, visit leftcoastnews.net.
Well, we're going to continue with this theme of allowed criminal behavior in the Pacific Northwest, in Washington. I mean, these stories keep coming faster than you can talk about them, right? All these people that should have been in jail but weren't. A registered sex offender who cut off his ankle monitor and committed further sex crimes against children across Washington and Oregon has been sentenced to 17 years in prison. James Jake Harrison Newcomer, 29, was sentenced in U.S. District Court in Seattle for sexually exploiting more than a dozen teens across the Pacific Northwest after absconding from DOC community custody. This guy should not have even been out of jail. U.S. Attorney Charles Neal Floyd announced the sentencing, highlighting the severity of Newcomer's actions between February and April 2024. U.S. District Judge John H. Chun, who presided over the sentencing, described the crimes as heartbreaking, noting that the youngest victim was just 12 years old. U.S. Attorney Floyd emphasized the danger Newcomer posed, stating, "This repeat offender is every parent's nightmare, the dangerous stranger who enters your home via the internet and steals your child's innocence." Newcomer, previously convicted in state court for rape of a child, was under state supervision and electronic monitoring, allowing a 30-month prison following a 30-month prison sentence. Why was he out on ankle monitor? On January 19th, 2024, his ankle monitor lost connection, and by January 25th, 2024, he had fled his residence. 6 days. Why wasn't this guy picked up immediately? Because they don't pay attention to this ankle monitor crap, and that should not be an option for these types of offenders. Over the next 3 months, Newcomer posed as a teenage boy on social media platforms like Discord and Snapchat, arranging meetings with teen girls whom he then drugged and sexually assaulted. His victims, aged 12 to 16, were from various counties in Washington and Oregon. Prosecutors revealed that Newcomer possessed multiple electronic devices containing child sexual abuse material, with some victims still unidentified. Family members of the victims shared in court the profound impact Newcomer's actions had on their children and families. One father stated, "He manipulated, drugged, and abused our child." Mike Harrington, special agent in charge of the FBI Seattle field office, remarked on Newcomer's failure to reform, saying, "Already a registered sex offender, Mr. Newcomer clearly didn't learn his lesson from his previous sentence. You cannot fix these people. You cannot fix these types of offenders." When are these Democrats going to wake up and realize that? You cannot give these people second chances. We see it over and over. Harrington praised the collaborative efforts of law enforcement agencies that led to Newcomer's capture, expressing hope that the sentence serves as a warning to other child predators. Yeah, right. Chun also ordered Newcomer to be on a lifetime supervised release following his prison term. On August 8th, 2025, Newcomer pleaded guilty to travel with intent to engage in sexual acts with a minor and 2 counts of attempted enticement of a minor. These charges carry severe penalties, with travel with intent to engage in sexual acts punishable by up to 30 years in prison, and enticement of a minor carrying a mandatory minimum of 10 years and up to life in prison. I think he earned life in prison. The case was investigated by multiple law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and several local police departments, and prosecuted by Assistant United States Attorney Cecilia Gregson. It was part of a Project Safe Childhood, a nationwide initiative launched by the Department of Justice to combat child sexual exploitation and abuse. It's disgusting that lawmakers in this state Democrat lawmakers don't take these crimes seriously. And instead, they're giving these people who shouldn't get second chances. You cannot reform these sex offenders, yet they continue to let them out. I talk about this almost weekly. When are these Democrats going to take criminal justice and crimes against victims seriously? When are they going to care about the victims more than the criminals? And when are the people of Washington, Oregon, and California going to wake up and decide that enough is enough? Now, if that sex offender story isn't enough to piss you off, this is mind-blowing. Right as this story is coming out about this sex offender, Washington State's Sentencing Guidelines Commission voted to recommend lighter sentencing options for adults caught in sex crime sting operations where adults, usually men, take active steps to meet who they think are children for sex. The commission voted 7-2 to urge lawmakers to create alternatives to incarceration for so-called offenses with no identifiable victim. That category includes internet sting operations where the child is actually an undercover detective. 3 on the commission chose to abstain. So just because they were caught by a cop, they shouldn't be charged as severely? This move was part of a strategic goal of Democrats to destigmatize child sex perverts as part of their far-left justice reforms. The policy choice could determine whether adult perverts who try to meet minors for sexual acts face meaningful consequences. The Commission's logic, echoing a 2022 Sex Offender Policy Board report, argues that net nanny sting offenders are supposedly lower risk than hands-on abusers and that the state should focus on treatment instead of prison. What kind of idiot comes up with this stuff? What kind of freaking moron comes up with this stuff? Somebody who thinks like these offenders is my guess. These people on this board, this commission, again, nobody cares about victims. Just because these people were caught in a sting doesn't mean they aren't out doing this shit and not getting caught. Just blows my mind, the naivety of these morons, right? These people making policy choices like this that affect everybody. What kind of treatment? You can't treat sex offenders. They don't change. The same board has also pushed treatment instead of jail time for people caught with child pornography and recommended eliminating public notice before citing facilities for violent sex offenders, according to a report in the Center Square. Seriously? Why are we doing everything we can to protect these dirtbags, the worst of the worst, people who harm kids? And being in possession of that garbage harms kids. During the discussion, Washington Sex Offender Policy Board Chair Brad Merrihew made a guest appearance. He downplayed these sting cases as cases which do not involve an identifiable victim, arguing that most of those are attempted crimes or communication with a minor for an immoral purpose with a victim who the person believes to be a minor when in fact they're a detective. So what? He argued most of the people caught in these net nanny stings have very little experience with the world and aren't the worst of the worst offenders. What a fucking idiot. Brad Merrihew. Merrihew focuses his private practice law firm. Oh, he's a fucking attorney. A dirtbag attorney. A slime bag, used car salesman, greaseball, fucking attorney. Does this surprise you? His private practice law firm on representing juveniles and adults accused of sexual misconduct. He argued that his clients often are on the autism spectrum. Oh well. Oh fucking well. They are with significant cognitive issues. Well, how about the kids that are the victims of your piece of shit clients, guy? Do you care about them? Obviously not. People like this attorney. I've had a couple who were schizophrenic in the last few years. These are young men who have had very little experience in the world, very little experience with the opposite sex. He said some are incels. Oh, well, you still know right from wrong. That doesn't excuse what he did to the victims. In the net nanny cases, these individuals, as the government can, and why is a guy, an attorney who has a private practice defending sex offenders, in charge of this fucking board making decisions about sex offenders? That seems like a conflict of interest to me. Obviously, he's going to think one way about how these pieces of shit should be handled. In the net nanny cases, these individuals, as the government concedes, don't go looking for minors, they go looking for adults. Mary Hugh also claimed they go to adult sites and often want to pursue sexual contact with, as I say, with an adult. When they're confronted with the fact that the person says, no, I'm 15, I'm 13, whatever it is, the person says that they are, then there's a process whereby the detective convinces the person that they should come and meet them and not worry about it. Oh, well. These people are the worst of the worst. And this attorney is in the same bucket as them. Representative Lauren Davis, Democrat, Shoreline, one of the only Democrats who consistently pushes back on this soft on predators trend, corrected the record, noting Mary Hugh is wrong. Davis notes that the activists who take Mary Hugh's perspective often attempt to offer a rosier picture of who the suspects actually are. Yep. Also, just want to make sure that everybody's clear that these are cases where a person has taken a substantial step to have sex with a child. That is the totality of these cases, Davis explains. She noted that the offenders caught in these stings are not naive young men. Many, she noted, are individuals in positions of power, judges, teachers, and people with full awareness of what they're doing. Yep. Oh, that attorney fucking lied. Big surprise. Attorneys like that lie for a fucking living. That guy should find the wood chipper with his clients. Davis summarized it plainly by noting that these are cases where someone has taken a substantial step to have sex with a child. They were just merely unlucky enough to be communicating with an undercover detective. She's right. Too bad her fellow Democrats don't seem to mind. In March, the Jason Ranch show, which is where this article came from, on Seattle Red 770 AM, exclusively exposed how Senator Lisa Wellman, Democrat Mercer Island, sponsored Senate Bill 5312 with Democrat Senators Noel Frame, Twina Nobles, and Claire Wilson signing on to weaken the consequences for adults caught trying to exploit children online. The bill would have reduced lifetime sex offender registration to just 5 years and capped community supervision at 3 years for people with no prior convictions. Again, Democrats care more about criminals and criminal rights than you or any victims in any of these cases. It's disgusting. Why are we voting for people who do not have the public's best interest in mind? Wellman's argument then that the targets of these stings weren't interacting with real children and that the current penalties were unfair. She was inspired by a Mercer Island man who believed he was arranging to molest a 13-year-old boy and 2 young girls. He showed up to the meeting with lubricant in his pocket. Democrats' instinct wasn't outrage at the man's intent. It was outrage that the state successfully caught him. Despite backlash, Wellman didn't abandon the cause. She pivoted to a quieter method, attempting to restructure the Missing and Exploited Children Task Force in a way that could restrict its ability to conduct these very stings. She worked closely with the man's father, a constituent, to pass the bill. It appeared bureaucratic, but the goal was unmistakable. It's impossible to ignore the broader hypocrisy. While Democrats posture about the importance of releasing Jeffrey Epstein-related records, framing themselves as champions of transparency and accountability for those who prey on minors, their actual governing record at home tells a different story. Again and again, the instinct is leniency for offenders caught trying to commit sexual crimes against children. Why is that? Treatment over jail time. There's no treatment for these people. There is something disconnected in their brain that cannot be fixed. Reduce registration, alternative sentencing, creating obstacles for proven sting operations. And now, with the Sentencing Guidelines Commission recommending alternative sentencing for sting offenders, the pattern becomes impossible to dismiss. Washington's far-left political class continues to soften the consequences for those who take concrete steps towards abusing children. Parents should not have to wonder whether the political leadership of this state sees predators as victims of circumstance. But with every new vote, every new bill, and every new recommendation to lower penalties or weaken stings, the message gets clearer. Protecting children is far less of a priority than protecting the adults who try to exploit them. And the only thing you can surmise from that is that the people passing these bills are conducting themselves in the same behavior or have the same desires of these offenders that they're trying to protect. Why else would they do it? Why else? Why do we put up with this? You should be contacting your legislators and telling them enough is enough, that you're tired of this, that crimes against children, crimes in general in this state need to be taken seriously with serious consequences, and stop cutting breaks for these criminals. They're a bunch of pigs. I don't know how else to say it. Slimy, greasy, dirty little pigs. These politicians and attorneys and these board members. It's disgusting. Yeah, it pisses me off. It should piss you off too. Well, after that happy little story, would you like to know more about the Washington State Sex Offender Policy Board? Because I'd like to tell you about it. Created in 2008 to make recommendations about, because obviously we have a serious problem with sex offenders if we have to have a whole board to decide what their punishment or lack thereof should be. So the current board membership for 2024 to 2026, as I stated before, Brad Maryhugh is the chair. Sonia Hardenbrook, also apparently a chair, are both members of the Washington Association of Criminal Defense Attorneys. Yes. Again, conflict of interest, putting defense attorneys in charge of deciding what consequences are for their clients. Great choice. Jake Weimer, Vice Chair, and Tarina Peterson with the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. I'd love to know how they feel about this, if they're police. Tricia Smith, Office of Crime Victims Advocacy. Donald Redfield, Association of Washington Cities. Blanche Barajas, Washington Coalition of Sexual Assault Programs. Keith Davos, DSHS Special Commitment Center. Mark Peavy, Department of Corrections. Sean Sant and Jimmy Hung, Washington Association of Prosecuting Attorneys. Jed Pellender, DCYF Juvenile Justice and Rehabilitation Administration. Michael A. O'Connell, Ph.D., and Julia Sather, M.A., LMHC, SOTP, with the Washington Association for the Treatment and Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse. Jill Getty, Interdeterminate Sentencing Review Board, the Honorable Nelson Lee, Superior Court Judges Association, and Gunnar Fulmer, Washington State Association of Counties. These people are voting for lesser penalties. Only 2 voted against it, and 3 abstained because they didn't have the balls to vote one way or the other. It's just, unfortunately, there are no upcoming meetings as the board is not actively convened on assignment. So the last meeting was November 21st, 2024. So you can look for this upcoming legislative session, some legislation probably being introduced to lower the consequences for these people, to make it harder for police to do their jobs. These people actually on their website have a tag for resources for survivors of sexual assault. What a joke. This board should be disbanded. These people don't have your best interest in mind. A lot of these people are in criminal justice or law enforcement and apparently don't care about victims and would rather cut criminals a break. Do you care? You vote for this stuff. You vote for these people. You vote for these Democrat policies. Why? What has gotten better in the last 20 years in this state? In any of these West Coast states, it's all downhill. Homelessness, crime, prices, taxes, all of it. But you keep voting for it. I don't understand. You don't want to be protected. You don't want to keep the money you earn from a job if you work. But you keep voting for this trash to make decisions about your life and things that go on around you that could affect your life. Drones, man. So many drones just going through life with no forethought, no common sense. Apparently no ability to put coherent thoughts together on their own. I'd say wake up, but apparently it's a bygone conclusion. It's not going to happen. And at the same time that all of this is going on, they're disarming the population so you can't protect yourself, or making it very difficult to do so. And somehow these people still trust the government. Well, continuing on the theme of crime and the Democrats' love of criminals, a Seattle sex offender who had been previously sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole is now accused of the 1994 murder of a 14-year-old Tanya Frazier. On Thursday, King County prosecutors charged Mark Anthony Russ, 57, with one count of murder in the first degree with sexual motivation after Seattle police said they linked him to Frazier's murder through DNA. In 1996, Russ was given a life sentence under Washington's persistent offender law, also known as 3 strikes, after being convicted of several violent crimes in the 80s and 90s. His life sentence was vacated due to sentencing reforms passed by the Democrats in the state legislature in 2021, and he was released from custody. He was rearrested this week in connection with Frazier's murder. Investigators alleged Russ was not complying with requirements of his status as a registered sex offender when he was rearrested. Big surprise. Tanya Frazier disappeared on July 18, 1994 after she left a summer school class at Meany Middle School in Seattle. Frazier's friends from the middle school told investigators they had been approached by a man after class on the day she vanished. The friends said Frazier walked with the man toward a truck that was parked nearby. 5 days later, a man who was walking his dog discovered Frazier's body in a grove of trees near 2200 Highland Drive. A police report said Frazier's body was partially clothed and she had sustained severe cuts to her neck. Police collected evidence of the scene, but no arrests were made at the time. A few months after the murder, a woman who was walking near Longfellow Creek in West Seattle found a pile of Frazier's belongings, including a school book, clothing, and a wallet. Investigators noted that Russ's mother lived near Meany Middle School in 94, and he resided at a home near where Frazier's belongings were dumped. Detectives with Seattle police said advances in DNA extraction technology allowed them to reanalyze samples taken from Frazier's underwear. In October, the crime lab reported they had matched Russ's DNA to semen that was found on Frazier's leg. Seriously? Why? Why are they letting guys like this out of prison? You get life sentence for a reason. Russ had been in and out of prison for several violent crimes in the 80s and 90s. In 1987, court records show Russ stabbed his girlfriend multiple times in the leg, crotch, stomach, and head. The woman required 175 stitches while she was being treated at Harborview Medical Center. The defendant called the ex-girlfriend at the hospital and told her he intended to finish the job on her. A charging document from the case says, in 1991, Russ was convicted of robbery in the second degree for taking money from the Washington Athletic Club in Seattle while telling employees he had a gun. In 1996, police arrested Russ for a violent home invasion and attempted rape in Tukwila. According to the charges, Russ forced his way into a home and threatened a house cleaner with a knife while taking her money and forcing her to take him to a jewelry box. Investigators from Tukwila police said the woman reported that Russ tried to rape her, but she told him she was on her period. Investigating detectives noted similarities between the case and several other unsolved crimes nearby. Prosecutors wrote in the 1996 charging documents, Russ was convicted of burglary, attempted rape in the first degree, and robbery. The conviction counted as his third strike under a Washington law, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Apparently it was possible. In 2019, the Washington legislature removed robbery in the second degree from the list of offenses that counted as a strike. That change, however, only applied to new cases and was not retroactive, but in 2021, Senator Jeannie Darnielle, a Democrat from Tacoma, sponsored SB 5164, which allows inmates to petition for resentencing if one of their strike offenses was robbery in the second degree. There is no question that hope will abound if we pass this bill today, Darnielle told a legislative committee in 2021. Hope will abound if we let these fucking criminals out to go commit more heinous crimes against the community, more violent crimes, more rape, more robbery. Good. Great idea. Hope will abound. What a naive nitwit this person is. Somehow, she's elected to political office. Somehow, she's creating policy for this state. And somehow, all the other Democrats are going along with this garbage that she presented to them and they voted on. Darnielle's bill had support from prosecutors, including then King County prosecuting attorney Dan Satterberg, who noted at the committee hearing that robbery in the second degree was the lowest crime on the 3-strike list. Okay, so what? It's still a violent crime. Always looking to make it easier for criminals. Always looking for criminals' rights, not victims. Not the victim rights. According to Darnielle, the law would apply to 64 inmates who were serving life sentences with robbery in the second degree as one of their strikes. It's a huge opportunity to return to their community, said retired Judge J. Wesley St. Clair, the chair of the Sentencing Guideline Commission. This must be like the sex offender commission, right? Some liberal activist judge, just like the liberal activist prosecutor. You let these people out, they go commit crimes, more crimes, don't follow conditions of release. We see this over and over and over again in the news, but it continues to happen. And people continue to support these politicians that push for this crap. St. Clair spoke in favor of the bill at the 2021 hearing. This has a real opportunity of undoing a misplaced belief and policy that has perpetuated unimaginable harm, resulting in unparalleled harm and disparate impact on specifically the black community, he said, because it's always about race. Forget about the crime that guy who is black committed. That doesn't matter because he's black. So he should get a second chance. Third chance, fourth chance, fifth chance, sixth chance. 70 some odd chances we've seen in the news before, right? Where is the common sense? This isn't a race issue. This is a crime issue. This is a mental health issue. Drugs. The bill passed the legislature and was signed into law by Governor Jay Inslee. Later that year, Russ applied for resentencing, which was granted, and he was sentenced to time served and released from prison in late 2021. Prosecutors have requested that Russ be held in the King County Jail without bail, noting that if convicted, the case would be his third strike, and he would automatically be sentenced to life in prison without parole. Again, second time around. But we all know that, the Democrats will come up with some reason why that won't stay too, I suppose. The victim in this case was a stranger to him, King County Senior Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mary Barbosa wrote in charging documents. She was 14 years old on her way home from school, located across the street from where the defendant's mother lived. He seemingly chose Tanya at random and induced her to talk to him by ruse. The viciousness of her injuries, the hiding of her body in a wooded area, the defendant's violent sexual history, the prison range he faces in this case, and the fact that he has ignored court orders renders him not only a serious flight risk, but an extreme danger to the community. Russ is scheduled to appear in court for an arraignment on November 12th, which has already happened at King County Courthouse. Prosecutors noted they are reviewing charges against Russ for failing to register as a sex offender. When is this stuff going to change? This guy should have never been out of prison in the first place. You're sentenced to life in prison. You shouldn't be able to, years later, petition for changes because the law has changed since. You were prosecuted at the time for what the laws were at the time, and that should hold. This guy gets out, fails to register, does who knows what else. He's committed other crimes since he's been out. These Democrats just keep putting dangerous people on the streets. And we keep voting for it.